Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled Gatekeepers of the Rift: The Epic Journey to Restore Balance. The fire crackled quietly in the hearth of Windmere Cottage, nestled at the edge of the ashenwood forest. The old stones of the chimney glowed faintly red, casting long shadows on the floorboards, while a pot of herbal tea simmered gently above the flame. Rain pattered steadily against the window panes, and a thick fog blanketed the world beyond. Inside, a young man sat in a worn leather armchair, a heavy journal resting across his knees. His name was Thelen Gray, and his hands trembled ever so slightly as he turned the page. He was not yet 30, but the lines around his eyes hinted at sorrows that aged him far beyond his years. Across from him, a girl no older than 16 sat curled on the floor with her arms wrapped around her knees. Her name was Myra Eloan, and she had come to Windmere only 2 days before, seeking shelter, answers, or perhaps something she couldn't name. "Thelen," she said quietly, her voice barely louder than the fire. "You said, you once saw something that changed your whole life. That it wasn't just a dream." Thelen's eyes lingered on the firelight as if searching for a shape within the flames. After a pause, he spoke not with the confidence of a storyteller, but with the weariness of someone opening old wounds. "It wasn't a dream, Myra. It was something real. And it began on a night like this, many years ago." He set the journal aside and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I was a student of the Word. A devout man. I traveled with books more than people. The city had grown too loud, too cruel for my soul, so I retreated to the monastery of Larathian's Reach. High on the cliffs, surrounded by storms and sea." His voice softened, growing distant. "There, I thought I would find peace. That God, or whatever name you give him, would meet me in silence. But what I found was not peace. It was something watching." Myra tilted her head. "Watching?" Thelen nodded slowly. "At night, when I sat in the library alone, I would feel it. Not fear, exactly. More like a presence. Something that had been waiting a very long time, just for me." He rose and walked to the small desk near the window. Opening a drawer, he retrieved a folded parchment and held it up to the firelight. The page was covered in strange, curling script, not quite Latin, not quite Elvish, something older. "This came to me one night. Slipped under my door with no sound, no footprints in the corridor. The ink was still wet." Myra reached out to touch it, but Thelen withdrew it just slightly. "I shouldn't have read it. But I did." He stared into her eyes now, a flicker of old pain rekindled. The moment I did, I heard the voice. Not with my ears. In my bones. It told me of a gate. A path. And that I must walk it alone. He folded the parchment carefully and returned it to the drawer. The next day, I left the monastery. No one stopped me. No one even seemed to remember I had been there. It was as if I had never existed. Myra shivered. Did you walk the path? Thelen nodded, slowly. And I found a house. She blinked. This house? No, he replied. Another. Older. Buried in mist and memory. I don't know if it was a place or a wound in the world. He returned to his chair, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Myra finally broke the silence. What did you find inside? Thelen exhaled slowly. A choice. He turned his gaze to her, and for the first time, she noticed the faint shimmer of silver in his irises, something unnatural. There are places where stories end, he said, and others where they begin again. That house offered me both. But I chose wrong. Myra leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. Then why tell me now? Thelen smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Because tonight, Myra. I feel it again. Watching. Waiting. And this time, I won't walk the path alone. Thunder rumbled faintly beyond the trees. Outside, the fog shifted. Something was approaching. The fire had died down to faint embers by the time Thelen finished his story. The room felt colder, heavier, as if something unseen had entered through the cracks in the walls. Myra remained quiet, but her hands clutched the edge of her blanket tighter, knuckles pale. What do you mean you chose wrong? She finally asked, her voice hushed, fragile. Thelen stared at the glowing cinders. For a moment, it seemed as if he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward the window where the fog had begun to recede, revealing skeletal outlines of the forest trees beyond. You remember I told you about the letter, he said. The one that spoke of a gate. Myra nodded. There were 3 things written in that message, Thelen continued. First, that the gate was near, hidden in plain sight. Second, that the path would reveal truth, not peace. And third. He hesitated. Third, that once I crossed, I would not return the same. He leaned back into the armchair, his voice almost cracking. I thought I was ready. I was arrogant. I believed knowledge was strength, that I could uncover ancient truths and remain untouched. I didn't realize that some doors do not open outward. They pull you in. Myra's eyes were wide. What happened when you entered the house? The Len's voice dropped to a whisper. It wasn't a house in the way we think of houses. Not bricks and stone. It looked like a ruin, half swallowed by earth, but inside, it was endless. Like a dream layered within a dream. Rooms full of memories that weren't mine. Whispers in languages I had never learned, yet understood. He reached into the folds of his coat and drew out a small object wrapped in cloth. Unwrapping it carefully, he revealed a smooth black stone etched with symbols that shimmered with faint blue light. This was in the center of it all, he said. A stone heart, pulsing like it was alive. I touched it. Myra instinctively leaned back. Why would you touch it? The Len gave a short, bitter laugh. Because I wanted to know. Because I was foolish. He closed his hand around the stone again, and the light disappeared. When I touched it, I saw myself thousands of times over. In different lives. In different bodies. All making the same mistake. Myra's brow furrowed. What mistake? Refusing to let go. A silence settled between them, thicker than before. The wind howled beyond the eaves. I tried to run, the Len said. But I had already been marked. Not physically, there's no scar. But part of me never left that house. It watches through me. Sometimes I dream, and I'm back there, only I'm not myself. I'm someone else. Or something else. Myra stood slowly and walked toward the hearth. Her face was pale, but calm. I came here for answers, the Len. But I think you've been waiting for someone to come and ask. He looked up, surprised. You don't seem afraid. She shook her head. I've seen things too. Not the same as yours, but strange enough to make the world feel hollow. I think that's why I was drawn here. She knelt and looked directly into his eyes. So now what? The Len regarded her with a new kind of awareness, something between awe and dread. Now, he said, we follow the path again. He stood and walked to the bookshelf at the far end of the room. Pulling one of the volumes loose, a thick tome bound in faded green leather, he opened it to a hollow carved in the center. Inside was a brass key and a faded map. Myra stepped closer. The map was drawn in fine ink, with curling script and red markings indicating a path that led far beyond Ashenwood, into a place marked only as Harrowmere Hollow. The gate is still open, the Len said. I can feel it. And this time, if I must enter again, I need someone to anchor me. Someone who still believes in light. Myra didn't hesitate. She reached out and took the key. Then let's find the truth. Together. A sudden gust of wind blew open the shutters, extinguishing the last ember in the fireplace. The path had opened. and they would walk it not alone. The morning after the storm was unlike any the Len had seen in years. The fog had not lifted, it had thickened, coiling between the trees like living silk. Outside the cottage, the world had grown quiet, too quiet. No birdsong. No rustling of branches. Only the soft crunch of damp leaves beneath boots. Myra adjusted the strap of her satchel, stuffed with the journal, the brass key, and a small vial of blue powder the Len had insisted she carry. In case we need to break a binding, he'd explained, without elaborating. They stood at the threshold of Windmere, staring down the narrow trail that curved into Ashen Wood. It looked different now. Wilder. Older. Trees bent inward, creating a dark canopy that swallowed the light. It felt less like a path and more like a mouth, waiting to close. You said you've walked this way before, Myra whispered. The Len nodded. Once. But only part way. I turned back before the hollow. And this time. He glanced at her, a flicker of resolve in his expression. This time we go through. They stepped into the forest. The air grew colder with each step. The deeper they went, the less the forest resembled anything earthly. Moss clung to the trees like veins. Stones were carved with symbols too ancient to be elvish. And every now and then, Myra thought she saw movement just beyond the edge of her vision, shadows flitting behind the trunks, never making a sound. Don't acknowledge them, the Len said without turning. They feed on attention. That wasn't comforting. As the hours passed, Myra noticed the forest playing tricks. She would blink and suddenly they'd be in a different clearing. Sometimes they heard laughter, soft, childlike giggles echoing through the woods. Once, the Len stopped abruptly and motioned for her to hold still. Ahead of them stood an old man. He was barefoot, wearing tattered robes, and held a lantern that burned with violet flame. His eyes were black voids. Do not speak, the Len whispered. The man or thing tilted its head at them. The flame in the lantern pulsed once, twice. Then, with a slow turn, it walked away, melting into the trees. Only when the air had warmed slightly did the Len breathe again. They are the Watchers, he said. Spirits of those who tried to claim the hollow for themselves. Some were seekers like me. Others were not. Myra looked back, shivering. And what are we? The Len smiled grimly. Fools, perhaps. By dusk, they reached the old bridge. It spanned a shallow gorge where the river below no longer flowed. The water had turned to mist, swirling endlessly in the ravine. The bridge itself was made of roots intertwined, pulsing faintly as if still alive. This marks the border, the Len said. Beyond this, we're not in Ashenwood anymore. Myra stepped forward, but the Len caught her arm. Once we cross, time won't behave the same. Days may pass like minutes. Or minutes may trap us for years. Myra studied the swirling fog. Then we don't look back, she said. Together, they stepped onto the bridge. It groaned beneath their feet but held. As they reached the center, the mist below surged upward, enveloping them in cold breath and whispers. Myra felt something tug at her thoughts, memories she hadn't summoned. Her mother's voice. A lost friend. A melody from a childhood lullaby. Don't listen, Thelen called out, though his voice sounded distant, as if underwater. But the memories pressed closer, seductive and warm. They offered comfort. Escape. Stay, and all pain ends. She gritted her teeth and focused on Thelen's form ahead. Step after step, she crossed, until the mist thinned and the air shifted. They were through. Beyond the bridge, the land was wrong. Trees had no leaves, yet their branches writhed. The sky was a deep crimson, not quite sunset, not quite dawn. The path split into three, each winding in a different direction. Thelen crouched, examining the ground. There are no tracks. No signs. Which way do we go? Myra asked. He didn't answer immediately. The key will tell us, he said finally, removing the brass key from his pouch. He held it out. The metal began to vibrate softly, then turned in his hand, pointing toward the rightmost path, which wound into a valley shrouded in violet mist. That's our way. And so they walked. As night fell, a strange glow began to emanate from the ground, fungi pulsing softly with pale green light. Creatures stirred in the dark, their eyes glinting like coins. Myra walked closer to Thelen, her hand drifting toward his coat. Then she heard it, a voice. Soft, trembling. Familiar. Her name. Myra. She froze. It was her father's voice. But he had died 2 years ago. Myra, come home. She turned, heart racing, but there was nothing behind her but the swaying mist. Myra. Thelen's voice cut through like a blade. He grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back just as a pale hand reached from the fog toward her throat, long fingers with blackened nails. He slashed it with a shard of silver from his satchel. The thing hissed and vanished. Don't wander, he said sternly. Not here. Never alone. Myra nodded shakily, tears in her eyes. I thought I was stronger than this. No one is strong here, Thelen replied. Only willing. They pressed on in silence, the key still glowing in Thelen's hand, pointing toward a fate neither of them could yet imagine. By the second nightfall, the forest had surrendered all pretense of natural order. What surrounded them now could barely be called woods. Trees twisted into spirals, bark etched with silent screaming faces, branches bleeding golden sap that shimmered like tears in the gloom. Even the air tasted wrong, like copper and burnt parchment. Thelen and Myra had made camp in a hollow beside a fallen obelisk, its surface etched in the same runes from the stone Thelen had once touched in his first crossing. The fire they built hissed instead of crackled, and the shadows it cast moved as if alive. "I think we're close," Thelen said, staring into the dancing darkness. His fingers ran over the brass key, which now vibrated constantly, the metal warm and pulsing like a second heartbeat. Myra sat opposite him, cloak wrapped tight, her face pale beneath her dark curls. "You said there would be a gate," she whispered. "But what exactly is it?" Thelen didn't respond at once. He seemed to be listening, ears tuned to something only he could hear. Finally, he spoke. "The gate is a wound. A tear in the fabric of what should be. It doesn't just open into another place, it opens into another truth. One the world forgot. Or tried to." He looked up, eyes shadowed with something Myra couldn't name. "The first time I crossed it, I lost something. A name. A memory. A part of myself. I didn't notice until it was too late." Myra frowned. "But what if that's what it wants? For us to forget who we are?" Thelen nodded slowly. "That's exactly what it wants." Suddenly, the air shifted. The wind stopped. The forest exhaled. And then, in the space beyond the trees, a low, rhythmic hum began to rise like a chorus of 1,000 whispers echoing through stone and bone. "It's calling," Thelen muttered. "It knows we're here." He stood, the key now glowing a fierce sapphire. "Come. It's time." They left the hollow and followed a winding trail through skeletal trees. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. Myra could almost make out words, fragments of forgotten languages, lullabies she didn't remember learning, and her own name, over and over. At the edge of a ridge, they found it. The gate. It stood alone in a clearing of dead grass. An arch of black stone rising 10 feet high, inscribed with countless sigils that shifted when she looked too long. Beneath it, the space shimmered like water seen through a dream. But more than anything, it pulsed with presence. Myra stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "No," Thelen said firmly. "It's hungry." As he approached, the key in his hand flared blindingly and then dimmed. The gate responded, the shimmer thickening into a solid veil, dark as ink, alive with swirling threads of silver. "We only pass once," Thelen said. "And once we do, we'll be seen. Not just by it, but by them." Myra turned to him. "You said you weren't alone the first time." "I wasn't," he admitted. "There was someone else. A woman named Lyrine. She led me here. Told me we could steal truth from the hollow. What happened to her? The Len didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out the journal, the one he'd always kept near, guarded like a sacred relic. He flipped to the last page. It was blank. He wrote a single sentence. We returned to the wound beneath the world. Then, he tore the page and tucked it under a stone at the base of a tree. If we don't return, he murmured, someone has to know we came. Myra stepped beside him and offered her hand. We will return, she said. The Len hesitated, then took it. Together, they stepped through. The world vanished. What lay beyond the gate defied explanation. There were no trees. No sky. Only endless corridors of shifting color, flowing between memories, between thoughts. They stood on something that wasn't quite ground, a weave of threads stretching in all directions, glimmering with echoes of everything ever lost. And then, from the distance, a shape approached. Not walking. Not floating. Becoming. It was humanoid, but faceless. Dressed in robes stitched from whispers, its form rippled like a reflection disturbed by thought. The Len Grey, it spoke not aloud, but into them. Myra gasped. You are not the first, it said. You will not be the last. The Len stepped forward. We seek Harrowmere Hollow. The truth buried in its heart. The thing tilted its head. You bring the key. But the key does not belong to you. A flash of lightning, though there was no sky. And suddenly, behind the being, Myra saw herself, but different. Older. Dressed in white, eyes aglow with silver fire. She was kneeling beside the same stone from the Len's vision. She saw herself touch it. She saw herself vanish. She stumbled back. What is this? The Len turned to her, eyes wide. Myra, he whispered. It's you. You've been here before. She shook her head. I don't remember. And then it clicked. The dreams. The lullabies. The voices. You refused to let go. The being raised its hand. You may enter, it said. But what you take, you must replace. Nothing leaves the hollow unpaid. The gate behind them sealed with a hum. And before them, a staircase of light formed in the void. At the bottom waited Harrowmere. And the truth. They descended the staircase of light in silence. Each step rippled beneath their feet, humming with a strange resonance that pulsed through their bones. The deeper they went, the more the air felt, heavy not with pressure, but with memory. It clung to their skin, settled in their lungs, whispered in their ears in voices both familiar and forgotten. At last, the staircase vanished behind them. They stood at the edge of a vast subterranean expanse. Harrowmere Hollow. It was not a place, it was a mind. The cavern stretched beyond vision, carved from obsidian and bone. Floating platforms drifted lazily above pools of black water. Enormous root-like tendrils hung from the ceiling, pulsing with faint crimson light. In the distance, spires of crystalline rock glowed with a sickly green hue. The walls weren't walls, they shifted, alive, watching. And in the center of it all stood the stone. The Len froze. "That's it," he whispered. "The heart of the hollow." The stone rose 10 feet high, its surface slick and dark like oil. The symbols on it swirled continuously, forming and unforming. At its base, the stone pulsed softly, each beat echoing in Myra's chest. She stepped closer without realizing it. The Len grabbed her wrist. "Careful. It remembers." She turned to him. "So do I." He blinked. "What?" "I know this place," Myra said, voice distant. "Not from dreams. From before." The ground beneath her shifted slightly, responding to her presence. Then, a voice spoke, not aloud, but within. "Child of the forgotten star, you have returned." Myra staggered back, gasping. "Did you hear that?" The Len nodded slowly. "It spoke to me differently, but yes." They approached the stone together. As they neared, it shimmered and changed. It became a mirror. But not of the present. Myra saw herself, younger. Barefoot, wearing a white robe. She stood in the hollow alone, her hand resting on the stone's surface. Behind her, an army of shadows watched in silence. She was chanting something, words in an ancient tongue. She did not seem afraid. She seemed divine. "Myra," the Len murmured. "You were here before, not in this life." The mirror shifted again. Now it showed the Len, but not as he was. He wore black robes, a circlet of silver on his brow, and his eyes glowed with violet fire. He stood beside Myra, his hand also on the stone. They were binding something. Sealing it. And they were smiling. The vision dissolved. Myra stepped back, trembling. "What does this mean?" The Len's face had gone pale. "It means we didn't just find a hollow." He looked at her. "We made it." The stone pulsed again, and a section of the floor opened with a hiss. A spiral staircase descended into firelight. The Len turned to Myra. "Whatever is down there, it's the reason we forgot. The reason we were split apart. The reason this place is broken." She hesitated. "Should we go?" He looked into her eyes. If we don't, everything repeats. Together, they descended. The lower chamber was circular. The walls were covered in carvings, moments frozen in obsidian. Myra touched one. A memory exploded in her mind. Flames. Screams. She and another Thelen fighting back a horde of wraiths in silver masks. She held a blade of glass. He chanted runes that bent reality. They had nearly failed. But then, she touched the heart. And offered herself. To buy them time. Myra gasped and fell to her knees. The memory had struck like lightning. She clutched her head, tears streaming down her face. I remember now, she whispered. I sealed the gate. I gave up my name. Thelen crouched beside her, jaw clenched. And I let you. His voice cracked. I was supposed to follow you. To bring you back. But I was too afraid. He held her hand. I'm sorry, Myra. I failed you. Not in this life. In the last one. She squeezed his fingers. Then let's not fail again. From the center of the chamber, a low rumble shook the floor. The wall split open and a figure stepped out. Tall. Cloaked in void. Its face was a mask of shifting runes, and it carried a staff carved from starbone. The guardian of the hollow. You return, it said, voice echoing like a bell struck in the dark. Bound once more by memory. Bound by the cost. It raised its staff. One must remain. One must carry the truth. Thelen stepped forward. Take me. Myra grabbed his arm. No, take me. The guardian tilted its head. There is another way, it said. But it requires both of you, to become what you once were. A pause. Then it extended its hand. To remember. To reclaim. To awaken the gatekeeper. The choice stood before them. Forget again or become whole. Myra looked at Thelen. And together, they stepped into the Guardian's light. The moment Myra and Thelen stepped into the Guardian's light, the world dissolved. Not into darkness, nor into light, but into a swirling storm of memories, emotions, and echoes, a place between times, where past and present converged like rivers meeting in a great sea. Their minds were no longer their own. Faces, names, and feelings flooded in, some joyful, others torturous, all vital. Myra gasped as she saw herself again, not as a frightened girl, but as the gatekeeper of the first dawn, standing resolute centuries ago, her hands glowing with radiant power, warding off shadowy creatures clawing to escape the hollow's depths. The lens vision showed him as the Silver Sage, a guardian who wielded not only magic but the wisdom of lifetimes, a man who had forged bonds between realms and sealed the Hollow's wounds only to be betrayed and fractured by fear. Their past selves were intertwined, bound by duty and tragedy. As the flood of memories crashed over them, Myra felt the sensation of a great power awakening beneath her skin, a light igniting in her chest that spread like wildfire through her veins. She opened her eyes to find herself kneeling on cold stone beside the Len, who looked as breathless and overwhelmed as she felt. "Do you remember now?" The Len whispered, voice hoarse. Myra nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Everything. The battles. The sacrifices. The betrayal. We were meant to guard this place, to protect the balance." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But we failed." "We did," she replied softly. "And now it's up to us to finish what we started." The guardian's voice echoed around the chamber. "You have awakened. The gatekeepers return. But beware, the Hollow remembers your failure and hungers for vengeance." A heavy silence followed. Then the ground trembled violently. From the shadows emerged figures not human, but twisted echoes of the past. Hollow wraiths, born from pain and regret, their forms shifting and shimmering with unnatural light. "They come," the Len said grimly. "We must stand." Myra rose, her hands glowing with the radiant energy of her true self. The Len stood beside her, staff in hand, chanting ancient words that resonated through the chamber. The battle began. Light clashed against shadow, the very air crackling with magic. Myra moved like a tempest, weaving beams of pure energy that tore through the wraiths, while the Len's incantations bent reality, creating barriers of shimmering force. But the Hollow was relentless. For every wraith destroyed, two more emerged from the darkness. As the fight raged, Myra glimpsed a figure watching from the edges of the chamber, a woman cloaked in midnight, her eyes cold and piercing. "She's the betrayer," the Len said quietly. "The one who shattered us all." Myra clenched her fists. "We won't let her win again." With a surge of power, they joined forces, their energies intertwining, forming a brilliant shield that pushed back the onslaught. The chamber shook one last time, and the wraiths dissipated into smoke. Silence returned. Breathing heavily, Myra looked at the Len. "We're ready," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For the true test." The Guardian spoke once more. "The gate awaits your command. To open or to seal. The fate of worlds rests in your hands." Myra stepped forward, feeling the weight of centuries on her shoulders. She reached out, and the heart of the Hollow responded, glowing brighter than ever. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were no longer lost. Together, as gatekeepers reborn, they would face the darkness and reclaim the light. The silence that followed the battle was broken only by the faint crackling of the heart of the hollow. The chamber felt alive, pulsating with an energy both ancient and urgent. Myra and Thelen stood side by side, eyes fixed on the figure that had watched from the shadows the betrayer. She stepped forward slowly, her cloak flowing like liquid night, eyes burning with a fierce intelligence that chilled the air. "I expected you to be stronger," she said, voice smooth but laced with venom. "But you are mere children playing with forces beyond your reckoning." Thelen tightened his grip on his staff. "Why did you do it? Why betray us?" The betrayer smiled a smile without warmth. "Because I was tired of sacrifice. Tired of serving a cause that demanded everything and gave nothing back. I sought freedom. Power. To remake the hollow in my own image." She extended a pale hand, and shadows writhed from the depths of the chamber, forming into twisted beasts with glowing eyes. "You will never seal the gate. You will never undo what I began." Myra stepped forward, light flaring in her palms. "You will be stopped." The betrayer laughed, a sound that echoed like shattered glass. "But I will not fall alone." Suddenly, the chamber shifted. Visions flooded the air, memories not theirs alone. Myra saw a younger version of the betrayer, once named Lyrine, standing beside Thelen and herself centuries ago, before the fracture. A trusted ally, a friend. Then she saw the moment of betrayal. Lyrine raising her staff against them, the gate tearing open wide, releasing darkness that swallowed the light. Myra's heart ached. "Why?" she whispered. The vision faded. Thelen's voice was barely audible. "She was one of us." But her heart broke under the weight of duty. She chose power over balance. The betrayer snarled and lunged, shadows swirling into a vortex that threatened to consume them. The battle resumed, fiercer than before. Myra and Thelen fought not only for their lives, but for redemption, for the hope that even the darkest wounds could heal. The chamber trembled with the fury of the battle. Shadows twisted and lashed like serpents, the betrayer's dark magic threatening to tear the very fabric of the hollow apart. Myra's light flared fiercely, a beacon in the encroaching darkness, while Thelen's incantations wove intricate patterns of protection and offense. But the betrayer was relentless. Her voice, dripping with malice, echoed through the vast expanse. "You cannot undo what I have done. The gate is open, and the darkness will consume all." Myra's heart pounded, but she refused to yield. "We will fight, even if it costs us everything." Suddenly, a shockwave burst through the chamber, throwing all three combatants to the ground. Dust and debris filled the air as the stone walls cracked and splintered. Thelen struggled to his feet, his staff glowing with renewed vigor. "We must seal the rift," he shouted, scanning the damage. Myra nodded, clutching her hands to summon all the light within her. She stepped toward the widening fissure, feeling the pull of the darkness seeping through. Memories flashed before her eyes, her past self sacrificing everything to hold the hollow closed, the pain and loss etched into her soul. Summoning her courage, she extended her hands over the rift, releasing a wave of pure light. The shadows hissed and recoiled but pressed on. The betrayer snarled and unleashed a torrent of dark energy, clashing violently with Myra's light. The Len joined, chanting words older than time, reinforcing the barrier. The chamber shuddered again. Myra felt her strength waning. In a moment of desperation, she reached deep into her core, awakening a power long dormant, a bond with the Len forged across lifetimes. Their energies intertwined, creating a radiant spiral that pulsed in rhythm with the heart of the hollow. The rift began to close. The betrayer screamed, her form unraveling as the darkness receded. With a final surge, Myra and the Len sealed the rift, silence falling over the chamber once more. Breathing heavily, they looked at each other, a mixture of relief and sorrow in their eyes. "This is only the beginning," the Len said softly. "The hollow's wounds run deep." Myra nodded. "But we have hope." Together, they turned toward the heart of the hollow, ready to face whatever came next. The chamber's silence was thick with anticipation as Myra and the Len stood before the heart of the hollow. The stone pulsed gently beneath their feet, as if breathing with the pulse of an ancient, sleeping giant. Myra felt a strange warmth spread from the base of the stone, creeping through her legs, filling her with a deep resonance. She looked down and saw faint veins of light spreading across the floor like rivers of silver, connecting her to the very core of the hollow. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, mingling with uncertainty. The Len nodded, his eyes reflecting the glowing veins. "That's the forgotten light. The source of the Gatekeepers' power, and the very essence of balance within the hollow." He placed a hand on the stone, and it responded by brightening, flooding the chamber with a soft, ethereal glow. "The light was once a beacon of hope," the Len continued. "Born from the first act of sacrifice, the sacrifice you made long ago, Myra. Your past self's willingness to give everything is what created this energy." Myra's breath caught. "So my power, it's tied to that sacrifice." "More than that," the Len replied. "It's woven into your soul, across all your lives. You carry the legacy of the Gatekeepers not just as a guardian but as the very heart of the hollow." She closed her eyes, feeling the light coursing within her, fragile yet unyielding. Suddenly, the chamber trembled again. From the depths beneath, a cold, oppressive shadow seeped upward, twisting the glowing veins into brittle, cracked patterns. A voice echoed through the chamber, cold and mocking. "You may have sealed the rift, but the hollow's darkness is eternal. It waits. It grows." Myra opened her eyes to see dark tendrils slithering along the floor, racing toward them. The Len raised his staff, summoning a protective barrier of shimmering light. "We must act fast," he urged. "The betrayer's influence still lingers, her corruption festers in the deepest roots." Myra stepped forward, drawing strength from the forgotten light within her. "We can heal this," she said firmly. "But we must reach the wellspring, the source where light and shadow meet." Thelen nodded. "It lies at the heart of Harrowmere. But the path is perilous, guarded by forces beyond comprehension." Without hesitation, Myra grasped Thelen's hand. "Then we face it together." As they moved deeper into the hollow, the light dimmed, shadows grew longer, and the air thickened with the weight of ancient sorrow. Yet, within that darkness, a spark of hope flickered, the promise that even in the deepest night, dawn would come. The path to the wellspring was unlike any they had traversed before. The hollow's eerie calm gave way to a tempestuous expanse of vast caverns strewn with broken pillars of obsidian and rivers of liquid light and shadow twisting through the floor like serpents. Every step was fraught with peril, the air itself hummed with latent magic, pressing against their minds like a suffocating veil. Myra tightened her grip on Thelen's hand, the pulse of the forgotten light resonating between them, tethering their souls in a bond forged not only by destiny but by enduring sacrifice. Each footfall echoed with whispered memories, fragments of lives once lived, battles fought, and promises made. Thelen's voice broke the oppressive silence, steady but edged with urgency. "The wellspring is more than a place. It is the origin of the hollow's power, the crucible where light and shadow are forever entwined. To heal the hollow, we must reach it and confront the truth it holds." Myra nodded, her eyes sharp with resolve. "And the betrayer? She guards secrets even I dare not fathom," Thelen admitted. "But her hold weakens with every step we take. The hollow itself resists her corruption." They advanced deeper into the cavern, the winding rivers of light and shadow parting before them like living paths. The glow shifted unpredictably from serene azure to ominous crimson, casting surreal patterns that played tricks on their vision. Strange creatures lurked in the gloom, shimmering wraiths with hollow eyes, ethereal serpents weaving through the rivers, and whispering shadows that tried to worm into their thoughts. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. From the darkness emerged a colossal figure, its form a chaotic swirl of light and darkness, crowned with jagged horns of pure energy. The guardian of the wellspring. Thelen stepped forward, raising his staff high, chanting incantations older than memory. Myra followed, channeling the forgotten light, her hands glowing with radiant energy. The guardian's voice thundered in their minds. "Seekers of balance, you stand before the crucible. But balance demands sacrifice. What are you willing to give?" Myra glanced at Thelen, both understanding the weight of the question. "Everything," they said in unison. The guardian's form fractured into shards of light and shadow, which swirled around them, enveloping them in a cocoon of shifting energies. Time stretched and warped, visions cascaded through their minds, glimpses of futures possible and impossible. Myra saw herself and Thelen united as gatekeepers, not just defenders but as beacons restoring harmony to fractured realms. She saw the betrayer, once leering, redeemed through sacrifice. But she also glimpsed darkness consuming everything if they failed. When the visions faded, they found themselves at the wellspring itself, a radiant pool where rivers of light and shadow converged in eternal dance. The Len knelt and dipped his hands into the waters, the energy flowing through him, revealing the hollow's deepest secret. The betrayer's betrayal was born from a fractured heart, torn between love and duty, and the key to healing lay in forgiveness and unity. Myra joined him, their energies merging, the forgotten light blooming within them, illuminating the wellspring with blinding brilliance. Together, they prepared to face the final trials that would determine the fate of Harrowmere Hollow and the worlds beyond. The wellspring's radiant light bathed Myra and Thelen, filling them with a power both ancient and new. Yet, amid the brilliance, a shadow loomed, an ominous presence that warped the very air around them. From the depths of the pool, the betrayer emerged, her eyes blazing with fury and sorrow. The glow of the wellspring refracted off her midnight cloak, creating a kaleidoscope of shifting darkness. "So, you have reached the heart," she hissed, voice like the grinding of ancient stones. "But this place does not forgive. It consumes." The Len stepped forward, staff steady, voice unwavering. "We come not to be consumed, but to heal." Myra's hands glowed, her light intertwining with the pulse of the wellspring. "Your darkness is born of pain, Lyrine. But it can be redeemed." The betrayer laughed, a sound both beautiful and terrible. "Redemption is a dream for the weak. I am beyond such things." With a sweep of her hand, shadows exploded outward, transforming into monstrous wraiths that surged toward them. The final trial had begun. Myra and Thelen fought side by side, their powers in perfect harmony. Light clashed with shadow, their combined strength pushing back the nightmarish horde. But the betrayer was no mere enemy, she was a mirror reflecting their deepest fears. She whispered doubts into their minds, revealed secrets long buried, their failures, their regrets, their darkest desires. "Why continue the fight?" she taunted. "When all you cherish will be lost. When even your bond is but a fragile flicker against the endless dark." Myra's resolve faltered for a heartbeat, but Thelen's grip on her hand grounded her. "We fight because we must," he said fiercely. "Because without hope, there is nothing." Summoning every ounce of their strength, they unleashed a torrent of light that shattered the wraiths and forced the betrayer back. The chamber trembled as the wellspring's energy surged, and a blinding light enveloped all. When the brilliance faded, the betrayer lay defeated, not destroyed, but transformed. The shadows that clung to her dissolved, revealing the woman beneath, scarred but free. She looked at Myra and Thelen with newfound clarity. "You have restored the balance," she said softly. "But the hollow will always carry its wounds." Myra nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We will protect it. Together." Thelen smiled, the weight of centuries lifting. As the wellspring's light washed over them, the hollow began to heal. The darkness receded, replaced by a dawn of hope and renewal. Their journey was far from over, but the final trial had forged them anew, gatekeepers united by light, shadow, and the enduring power of sacrifice. The light of the wellspring faded softly, replaced by a gentle warmth that spread through the cavern like a comforting embrace. Myra and Thelen stood together, hands still intertwined, hearts beating in steady rhythm. The hollow was healing. But their journey was far from over. A path of shimmering light unfurled before them, a bridge back to the world they once knew. The walls of the cavern softened, revealing glimpses of forests, skies, and distant mountains bathed in dawn's first glow. Myra inhaled deeply, the scent of fresh earth filling her senses. It's different. The world feels new. Thelen smiled, a quiet joy lighting his eyes. And so are we. As they crossed the bridge, memories of their long journey played through their minds, battles fought, sacrifices made, truths uncovered. Each step carried them closer to home, but also to an uncertain future. Emerging from the hollow's depths, they found themselves standing at the edge of Ashenwood Forest, where mist curled lazily through ancient trees. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose. But all was not as it had been. The land bore scars of darkness, a lingering shadow in places untouched by light. Creatures once corrupted stirred beneath the surface, and whispers of unrest traveled on the breeze. Myra turned to Thelen, determination shining in her eyes. Our work continues. He nodded solemnly. The hollow's wounds may heal, but the world outside still needs us. Together, they set out toward Windmere Cottage, where their journey had begun. Along the way, they noticed subtle changes within themselves, a deeper connection to the forgotten light, an unspoken bond that transcended words. At the cottage, a figure awaited, a messenger from realms beyond, bearing tidings of allies and enemies alike, and a call to unite for the trials ahead. Myra and Thelen exchanged a glance, understanding the path before them was one of endless vigilance, courage, and hope. As dawn broke fully over the land, they stepped forward, ready to embrace the new era forged by sacrifice, friendship, and the enduring light within their souls. The air outside Windmere Cottage was thick with the promise of change. Though the morning sun spilled golden light across the land, a shadow lingered on the horizon, an omen whispered in the rustling leaves and carried on the cool breeze. Myra and Thelen stood side by side on the porch, eyes scanning the distant woods where the first hints of unrest began to stir. Their journey through the hollow had forged them anew, but the world they had returned to was far from healed. Peace is a fragile thing, Myra said softly, voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Especially after so much darkness. Thelen nodded, tightening the leather straps on his satchel. We knew the fight wouldn't end with the hollow's healing. The balance shifts, and others seek to claim the void left behind. Their thoughts were interrupted by the approach of a rider, dust swirling beneath hooves as a lone figure emerged from the trees. Clad in weathered armor and bearing the emblem of a forgotten order, the rider reined in sharply before them. I bring news from the east, the rider said, dismounting swiftly. The Council of Elders has convened. They fear the darkness stirs beyond the borders, seeking new allies and sowing discord. Myra's eyes narrowed, We must go to them. Thelen looked toward the horizon, where storm clouds gathered, dark and brooding. The hollow was only the beginning. Now we face the true test. That evening, as twilight deepened, Myra and Thelen prepared to depart. The village around Windmere buzzed with anticipation and unease, whispers of old legends and new dangers intertwining in the air. Before leaving, Myra visited the ancient oak tree at the village's edge, a sentinel that had witnessed countless seasons. Placing her hand on its gnarled bark, she whispered a prayer to the forgotten light, seeking guidance and strength. As darkness fell, the pair set out on horseback, their silhouettes swallowed by the growing night. Days passed beneath a tapestry of stars and storms. Along the way, they encountered allies, mystics, warriors, and scholars, each bearing gifts and knowledge vital to the looming conflict. Among them was Elysia, a seer whose eyes reflected the swirling cosmos, and Ribbon, a stoic warrior haunted by shadows of his past. Together, they formed a fragile fellowship bound by purpose and hope. Their journey led them through forgotten forests, over jagged mountains, and across ancient ruins whispered to be gateways to realms beyond. Yet, with every step, the darkness pressed closer. Twisted creatures stalked their path, agents of chaos seeking to unravel the fragile alliances being forged. One night, beneath a blood-red moon, Myra awoke to a whisper threading through her dreams, a warning from the hollow itself. The betrayer's heirs rise. The past sins shall awaken. She shivered, awakening Thelen. We are not alone in this fight, she said. And the shadows remember. The days ahead promised trials unlike any before. Bonds would be tested, sacrifices demanded, and truths uncovered that could change the fate of all worlds. But Myra and Thelen rode onward, hearts steadfast, and spirits unyielding, ready to meet the storm gathering on the horizon. The great hall of the Council of Elders was carved from ancient stone and adorned with banners faded by time. Massive pillars rose like sentinels, their surfaces etched with glyphs that hummed faintly with lingering magic. Torches flickered, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits along the vaulted ceiling. Myra and Thelen entered the chamber amidst a murmur of voices, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. Around the circular table sat the council, a diverse assembly of figures cloaked in tradition, power, and secrets. At the head sat Elder Malgor, a stooped man whose piercing gaze seemed to weigh the very souls before him. Beside him, Lady Isolde, a noble woman with sharp eyes and a voice like tempered steel, whispered urgently to a hooded figure whose face was obscured. Elysia and Ribbon stood near Myra and Thelen, each visibly tense. The seer's eyes glimmered with distant stars, while the warrior's jaw tightened in silent resolve. Elder Malgor's voice cut through the murmurs. The darkness gathers beyond our borders, its tendrils reaching into the hearts of men and magic alike. This council convenes to chart a course through the encroaching night. Myra stepped forward, her presence commanding attention despite her youth. The hollow is healing, but the wounds it leaves behind are vulnerable. We must unite to face what comes next. Lady Isolde's gaze flicked to Myra, skeptical. Unity is a fragile thing, young gatekeeper. Not all here share your optimism. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Ribbon's voice, low and steady, interrupted. Optimism is earned through action, not mere hope. We must act decisively. Elder Malgor nodded gravely. Wise words, warrior. But first, we must understand the enemy. Elysia's voice, ethereal and calm, rose. The betrayer's legacy is not confined to Harrowmere Hollow. Her heirs walk among us, shadows born of fractured souls, seeking to unravel the balance. Whispers spread like wildfire. Myra's gaze met Elysia's. Can we identify these heirs? The seer closed her eyes briefly. They wear faces familiar and strange. Some are leaders, others hidden in plain sight. Their corruption is subtle, a poison seeping into the roots of power. The lens fists clenched. Then the battle is not only for the hollow, but for the very soul of our world. The council debated long into the night, strategies clashing as fiercely as swords. Alliances formed and shattered, old grudges resurfacing, and the weight of history pressing heavily on every decision. Amid the turmoil, Myra found herself drawn into whispered conversations, secrets exchanged in shadowed corners, hints of betrayal even within their ranks. One evening, alone in the chamber's vast library, Myra uncovered a faded manuscript, a chronicle of past gatekeepers, their triumphs and failures, and a prophecy hinting at a darkness greater than the betrayer herself. As she read, a chill settled over her. The prophecy spoke of a rift walker, a being born of light and shadow, destined to either bind the worlds or shatter them forever. She looked up to find Elysia standing behind her, eyes wide with recognition. The Rift Walker, it is said the Gatekeepers' union may awaken this power. Myra swallowed hard. Are you saying one of us? Elysia nodded slowly. Or both. Meanwhile, Ribbon confronted Myra later under the pale moonlight, voice low and urgent. We are not just fighting darkness outside, he warned, but the darkness within ourselves. Trust is fragile, and the greatest threat may come from those we call allies. Myra nodded, the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. The days ahead promised danger and revelation, alliances, and sacrifice. As the council prepared to send envoys and warriors across the land, Myra, Delenn, Elysia, and Ribbon formed a bond forged in purpose and necessity, a fellowship ready to face the gathering storm. The first rays of dawn struggled to pierce the heavy curtains of the council chamber, where tension hung thicker than the morning fog. Myra sat quietly at the edge of the circular table, eyes fixed on the flickering torchlight that cast dancing shadows over the aged faces gathered before her. The previous nights of debate and revelation had left the council fractured. Old alliances teetered on the brink, and whispers of dissent spiraled like the cold wind that swept through the ancient hallways of the citadel. Elder Malgor's grizzled voice echoed as he called the chamber to order. The time for hesitation has passed. The Rift Walker prophecy looms over us, and the betrayer's heirs tighten their grip. We must act decisively. Lady Isolde narrowed her eyes, her voice sharp and commanding. Yet, before we send our forces into the wild, we must root out the corruption within. Trust is a luxury we cannot afford. A murmur of uneasy agreement followed. Across the table, the hooded figure whispered to Lady Isolde a subtle exchange of words that sent a ripple of suspicion across the room. Myra's gaze flickered to Thelen, who sat beside her, his jaw clenched but eyes resolute. "We can't fight a war divided," he murmured. "We must uncover the truth before the darkness consumes us all." Elysia, standing near a towering window that overlooked the sprawling city, raised her voice with calm authority. "The shadows grow bolder. Our spies report movements in the southern territories, strange cults gathering, their loyalties unknown. We must send envoys." Ribbon's hand rested on the hilt of his sword, fingers twitching with impatience. "And what of those who walk among us? The traitors hidden in plain sight. We cannot afford to ignore the enemy within." The chamber erupted into heated debate, accusations flying like arrows. Myra felt the weight of leadership press heavier upon her as secrets began to unravel. Later, in a quiet corner of the citadel, Myra confided in Elysia and Ribbon. "There's more at play here than we realize," she said, her voice low. "The betrayer's heirs have infiltrated the council itself." Elysia nodded gravely. "Power corrupts, and fear breeds betrayal. We must be vigilant." Ribbon's gaze hardened. "And ready to strike when the time comes." Days turned to nights filled with whispered plots and shadowed meetings. Myra's visions grew more vivid, fragments of a future where the Riftwalker's power was unleashed, tearing worlds apart. One evening, as Myra pored over ancient texts in the library, a sudden chill swept through the room. The candles flickered and dimmed. A figure cloaked in darkness slipped silently behind her. "Trust no one," a voice hissed close to her ear. Myra spun, but the figure had vanished, leaving only a single black feather resting on the table. The game had changed. The true battle was no longer just against external forces, but against the unseen threads of deception weaving through their very midst. The night cloaked the citadel in an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant howl of the wind and the faint crackle of torches flickering against stone walls. Within the shadowed corridors, whispers of treachery curled like smoke, weaving a dangerous tapestry of suspicion and unrest. Myra moved silently through the halls, her heart pounding with the weight of knowledge and doubt. The black feather left in the library was not just a warning, it was a symbol. The betrayer's heirs were closer than anyone dared admit, hidden behind masks of loyalty and honor. She found Thelen in the armory, sharpening his blade with a practiced hand, but eyes clouded with concern. "We don't have much time," she said softly. "The council fractures beneath us. We need to act before it's too late." Thelen nodded, sheathing his sword. "I've uncovered a plot. Some council members are in league with the shadow cults, planning to open the rift and unleash chaos." A chill ran through Myra's spine. We have to stop them. Their plan was perilous, to infiltrate a secret gathering deep within the catacombs beneath the citadel, where traitors would convene under the cover of darkness. Joined by Elysia and Ribbon, the quartet prepared themselves with quiet determination. Elysia's visions guided their steps, while Ribbon's skill promised protection against unseen threats. As they descended into the labyrinthine catacombs, the air grew thick with dampness and the scent of decay. Flickering sconces cast long shadows that danced like phantoms on the walls. Ahead, muffled voices echoed plots and lies whispered with venomous intent. Myra's pulse quickened as they neared the chamber where the traitors gathered. Peering through a narrow slit in the ancient stone door, they saw figures cloaked in dark robes, faces hidden beneath hoods. At the center stood Lady Isolde, her expression cold and resolute. "This is worse than we thought," Thelen murmured. "She leads them." Elysia's eyes narrowed. "The heart of the betrayal beats here." They waited for the right moment, then burst through the door with a battle cry. Chaos erupted. Spells flared and blades clashed in a violent dance. Myra unleashed waves of radiant energy, searing shadows, and illuminating the cavern with blinding light. Thelen's staff struck with thunderous force, breaking enchantments, and scattering enemies. Ribbon fought with lethal precision, cutting through foes who had once been allies. Elysia's chants wove protective wards, shielding the group from dark magic. But Lady Isolde was no ordinary adversary. She summoned tendrils of shadow that twisted and struck like serpents, forcing Myra to shield herself behind a wall of light. "You cannot stop the inevitable," Isolde hissed. "The rift will open, and darkness will reign." Myra met her gaze, defiant. "Not while we stand." The battle reached a crescendo as Myra and Isolde clashed in a storm of light and shadow. Sparks flew, and the very walls trembled under their power. Suddenly, Isolde's staff shattered, and she fell to her knees, defeated but unrepentant. The surviving traitors fled into the darkness, their plans foiled but the threat far from over. Breathing heavily, Myra looked to her companions. "We've won this battle," she said, "but the war has just begun." Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, promising a new day and new challenges to face. The citadel lay behind them like a sleeping giant, its towering spires silhouetted against the waning stars. Myra, Thelen, Elysia, and Ribbon rode steadily away from the shadows of politics and betrayal, their minds heavy with the weight of recent battles but eyes fixed on the horizon where new dangers awaited. The land beyond was vast and untamed, forests stretching like endless seas, mountains carved by time's relentless hand, and villages whispering of old legends and new fears. The Fellowship's journey now took them into the heart of this world, where the ripples of the Hollow's awakening stirred ancient powers long forgotten. Myra's thoughts drifted to the prophecy Elysia had revealed: the Rift Walker, a force born of light and shadow intertwined, capable of uniting or destroying all realms. She wondered whether they were that force, or if something darker still awaited their reckoning. One evening, as they camped beneath towering oaks, a messenger approached a young woman clad in emerald robes, bearing the seal of the Order of the Silver Flame, a legendary brotherhood sworn to guard the balance between worlds. Her name was Seraphine, and her message was urgent. Darkness gathers in the east, Seraphine said, eyes scanning the faces around the fire. A cult known as the Black Veil seeks to harness the Riftwalkers' power for their own ends. They have already struck at several border towns, leaving devastation in their wake. Thelen frowned. We must intercept them before their plans come to fruition. Elysia nodded. Their leader is rumored to possess forbidden magic, capable of bending time itself. We face not only a physical threat but a challenge to the very fabric of reality. Ribbon tightened his grip on his sword. Then we ride at dawn. As dawn broke, the fellowship set forth, their horses' hooves pounding a steady rhythm that echoed the resolve within their hearts. The journey was perilous. Ambushes by cultists, treacherous terrain, and lingering doubts tested their strength and unity. Along the way, Myra found moments to speak with Elysia about the visions that haunted her, the flickers of possible futures, some bathed in light, others swallowed by shadow. You carry a burden few understand, Elysia said gently. But within you lies the seed of hope. Trust in it. Thelen shared quiet conversations with Ribbon, the warrior's stoic facade occasionally cracking to reveal glimpses of pain and redemption. They spoke of loss, honor, and the cost of their mission. As they neared the eastern borders, the air grew thick with foreboding. Villages lay in ruin, the cries of the fallen carried on the wind. The Black Veil's influence was unmistakable. Myra's resolve hardened. This is more than a battle for survival, she said. It is a fight for the soul of our world. Together, they prepared to confront the darkness rising beyond the walls of their past and to face the trials that would shape their destinies. The eastern horizon burned with an eerie crimson glow, the sun swallowed by thick clouds that churned like a storm ready to break. Myra, Thelen, Elysia, Ribbon, and Seraphine rode hard through the scarred landscape, where villages lay in ruin and the scent of smoke clung to the air. The Black Veil cult had spread their poison like wildfire, corrupting the land and bending minds to their dark will. Their leader, a shadowy figure known only as Viola, wielded forbidden magic that twisted reality itself. As the Fellowship approached the besieged city of Arinder, the last bastion before the cult's rumored stronghold, the ground trembled beneath them, the harbinger of the battle to come. Arinder's walls were battered, towers crumbled, and its people weary but unbroken. The city's defenders prepared for the inevitable assault, their faces etched with determination and fear. Myra dismounted, her gaze sweeping over the chaos. We must hold this line. If Arinder falls, the cult's reach will be unstoppable. Thelen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We fight not just for the city, but for every life it shelters. Inside the city walls, the Fellowship gathered with the defenders. Plans were laid, spells woven, and weapons readied. Elysia's enchantments strengthened the barriers, while Seraphine's order rallied the troops with prayers and blessings. As night descended, the cult's forces emerged from the shadows, a twisted army of fanatics and monsters, their eyes burning with zealotry. The battle erupted with a roar. Arrows darkened the sky, clashing with spells that streaked like meteors. Myra led the charge, her light cutting through the darkness, rallying the defenders with a fierce cry. The Len fought alongside Riven, their movements a deadly dance of sword and sorcery, cutting down cultists who sought to breach the walls. Seraphine moved through the ranks, healing wounds and bolstering spirits, her presence a beacon of hope amid the carnage. But Violet was no ordinary enemy. From the shadows, he emerged a towering figure cloaked in shifting darkness, eyes glowing with malevolent power. With a gesture, he warped the battlefield, twisting time and space, causing confusion and despair among the defenders. Myra's light faltered under the weight of his magic, but she refused to yield. Drawing upon the forgotten light, she unleashed a surge of energy that tore through the distortion, piercing Violet's defenses. The cult leader snarled, raising his staff to retaliate. The Len stepped between them, chanting incantations that bound Violet's power, buying Myra precious moments. The battle reached its crescendo as the two forces collided in a clash of wills and strength. In a final desperate act, Violet summoned a vortex of shadow aimed to consume the city. Myra and Thelen joined hands, channeling the combined light of the wellspring and the forgotten light. Their energies merged, creating a radiant barrier that shattered the vortex and banished Violet into the abyss. The cultists fled, broken and leaderless. Exhausted but victorious, the defenders of Arinder began to rebuild, their spirits rekindled by hope and courage. Myra looked to her companions, gratitude and determination shining in her eyes. "This victory is but a step," she said. "The shadows will rise again, but together, we will stand." The sun rose over Arinder, casting golden light across a city slowly stirring from the shadows of war. The streets, though scarred and littered with debris, were alive with the hum of rebuilding, a testament to resilience and hope. Myra stood atop the citadel's highest tower, gazing out over the city. The battle had tested them all, but it had also revealed truths long buried beneath layers of time and silence. Beside her, Thelen approached, his expression thoughtful. "The cult's defeat here will echo across the land, but Violet's banishment is not the end. The rift remains vulnerable." Myra nodded, her eyes narrowing. "We must understand more about the Rift Walker, the Betrayer's heirs, and what lies beyond the Hollow." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Elysia and Riven, carrying urgent news. "Scouts report strange disturbances to the north," Elysia said. "Ancient ruins awakening, and an energy unlike any we've felt before." Riven added, "It's drawing attention both friend and foe alike." The fellowship gathered in the war room, poring over maps and relics. Among the artifacts was a shard of crystal pulsing with faint light, the Heard said, rumored to be a fragment of the wellspring itself. Elysia's voice was calm but urgent. "The Heard said may hold the key to stabilizing the rift, but its power is dangerous. We must approach with caution." Myra's mind raced. The balance between light and shadow was fragile, and every step forward revealed new layers of complexity. That night, Myra dreamed visions of a vast, intertwined webs stretching across realms, with threads fraying and glowing where the rift weakened. She saw faces, some familiar, others shadowed in mystery, and heard whispers calling her name. Awakening, she knew their journey was far from over. The Fellowship prepared to set out toward the northern ruins, aware that what they would face there could change everything. As they rode under a sky heavy with stars, bonds deepened and secrets shared, each member of the group carrying hopes, fears, and burdens that only the road ahead could unravel. The morning mist clung to the dense forest as the Fellowship approached the ancient ruins of Eldora. Massive stone pillars, cracked and worn by centuries of wind and rain, rose like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. Vines snaked through crumbled archways, and faint glyphs glowed with an ethereal light beneath layers of moss. Myra's heart pounded with a mixture of awe and trepidation. This was a place steeped in forgotten magic, one of the few remaining gateways between realms, long abandoned but never truly silent. Thelen led the group cautiously, his staff glowing softly to illuminate the shadowed paths. Elysia whispered, "The energy here is unlike anything we've felt before. The rift's influence is strong." Riven scanned the perimeter, alert for threats both mundane and magical. As they ventured deeper, the ruins seemed to respond, the glyphs pulsed brighter, and the air shimmered with latent power. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. From the shadows emerged figures cloaked in twilight, guardians of Eldora, ancient spirits bound to protect the sanctity of the ruins. Myra stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "We come seeking knowledge and aid to heal the rift," she said, voice steady. The spirits regarded them silently before a voice echoed a chorus of many tones, old as the earth. "To walk the path of healing, one must first face the echoes of the past." Visions swirled around the Fellowship, revealing forgotten histories of Eldora, wars waged between light and shadow, sacrifices made to seal the rift, and a warning of a darkness yet to come. Myra felt the weight of those memories settle in her soul. The ruins held a secret, a dormant power that could either mend the fractures between worlds or shatter them irreparably. As the Fellowship prepared to unlock Eldora's mysteries, the shadows gathered once more. The battle for the balance was far from over. The final dawn broke over the land, washing the world in hues of gold and rose. Myra, Thelen, Elysia, Riven, and Seraphine stood at the threshold of the rift, its swirling energies calm for the first time in centuries. The ruins of Eldora behind them whispered of sacrifices past, and futures yet to come. The battle had been long and harrowing. Countless trials tested their resolve, and shadows from within and beyond threatened to consume all hope. Yet here they stood, united, the light of the wellspring shining bright within their hearts. Myra stepped forward, placing her hands upon the rift's edge. A warmth spread from her touch, weaving through the fabric of reality. The rift pulsed, responding to her call. Thelen joined her, his voice steady as he chanted the ancient words of binding, a song of unity, sacrifice, and rebirth. Their voices intertwined, harmonizing with the energies around them. Light and shadow danced in delicate balance, swirling into a brilliant tapestry that sealed the rift. But this was no mere closure. It was a transformation. The rift did not disappear, it became a gateway not to destruction, but to connection. Worlds once torn apart now bridged by the light they had forged. Elysia smiled, tears glistening. Balance restored. Ribbon clasped Myra's shoulder. And a new journey begins. Seraphine raised her hands to the sky, sending a prayer of thanks to the forgotten powers that had guided them. As the sun rose higher, the fellowship looked to the horizon not as weary survivors, but as guardians of a new dawn. Myra felt the light within her swell, a beacon for those lost in darkness and a promise that hope endures. The lens squeezed her hand, voice soft but filled with conviction. We are the gatekeepers now. Keepers of light, shadow, and the space between. Together, they stepped forward into the world reborn, ready to face whatever the future held, bound by sacrifice, friendship, and the enduring power of hope. Tuda, title. Gatekeepers of the Rift, the epic journey to restore balance. Amota, description. Dive into an epic fantasy adventure following Myra and Thelen, two gatekeepers destined to heal a fractured world torn by darkness and betrayal. From the haunted depths of Harrowmere Hollow to the ancient ruins of Eldora, they face shadowy cults, ancient magic, and internal betrayals that threaten to unravel reality itself. Join their harrowing quest filled with fierce battles, mystical powers, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and sacrifice. Will they restore balance and seal the rift forever, or will the darkness consume all? Discover the fate of worlds in this captivating saga of light and shadow. Prompt Chotung Hoi Truyen. Chapter 1, The Ember Beneath the Hearth. A cozy rustic cottage interior at night with a crackling fireplace casting warm orange light. A young man with dark hair and weary eyes sits in a leather armchair holding a worn journal. Across him, a teenage girl with curly hair sits on the floor near the fire, wrapped in a blanket. Outside, rain patters gently against the window. The scene is painted in soft, warm tones, evoking mystery and intimacy, in a realistic fantasy art style. Chapter 2, The House Beneath the Ashes. An ancient, mist-covered ruined house half buried in overgrown forest. The atmosphere is eerie and dreamlike, with endless shadowy rooms that seem to stretch infinitely. A glowing black stone with blue runes pulses softly at the center. Two figures, one a weary man with a silver gleam in his eyes, the other a young woman, stand near the entrance, illuminated by faint magical light. The style is dark fantasy with detailed textures and ethereal lighting. Chapter 3, The Forest That Remembers. A dense, ancient forest shrouded in thick fog with twisted trees whose bark bears faces and runes. Ethereal shadowy figures peek between trunks. A narrow winding path with two travelers walking cautiously, a young woman with glowing hands and a man with a glowing staff. The scene is moody and mysterious, rendered in a high-detail fantasy illustration style with muted, cool colors. Chapter 4, The Gate of Whispers. A towering black stone archway glowing with shifting silver sigils, standing alone in a foggy clearing. The portal shimmers like dark water, pulsating with magical energy. Two travelers stand before it, a woman holding a glowing brass key and a man chanting ancient incantations. The surrounding forest is twisted and surreal, colored in dark purples and blues, with a mystical, otherworldly vibe in a cinematic fantasy art style. Chapter 5, Harrowmere Hollow. A vast subterranean cavern carved from obsidian and bone, filled with floating platforms above black reflective water. Crimson glowing tendrils hang from the ceiling. Two figures approach a 10-foot dark stone etched with swirling magical runes. The atmosphere is ominous and awe-inspiring, with a mixture of beauty and menace. The art style is epic dark fantasy with dramatic lighting and intricate detail. Chapter 6, The Awakening of the Gatekeepers. A surreal, swirling storm of memories and light and shadow merging into a vortex where two figures kneel beside a pulsating glowing heartstone. Their forms radiate light and violet energy as they are surrounded by ancient mystical symbols and ethereal threads. The mood is transcendental and powerful, evoking awakening and rebirth, illustrated in a vibrant, high fantasy art style. Chapter 7, Shadows of the Betrayer. A dark, ruined chamber filled with swirling shadows forming monstrous wraiths with glowing eyes. A tall cloaked woman with shifting runes masking her face stands commanding the darkness. Two heroes confront her with glowing light and magical staffs. The scene is tense and dramatic, rendered with a dark color palette and intense contrasts in a fantasy battle scene style. Chapter 8, The Rift of Shadows. A chaotic battlefield within a vast cavern, where waves of shadowy monsters clash against radiant beams of light. Two warriors stand united, one wielding a glowing sword and the other chanting spells. The cavern walls crack and glow as magic erupts. The art style is dynamic and vivid, capturing motion and high-stakes conflict in a dark fantasy setting. Chapter 9, Echoes of the Forgotten Light. An ancient stone chamber glowing softly with silver veins spreading across the floor. Two figures stand before a giant pulsating glowing heartstone, their hands raised to channel mystical energy. Shadows creep along the edges, while ethereal light illuminates the scene with serene yet tense atmosphere. The style is mystical, with intricate rune carvings and ambient lighting. Chapter 10, The Journey to the Wellspring. A vast underground cavern with rivers of twisting light and shadow flowing like serpents across the floor. A colossal glowing guardian formed of swirling light and darkness confronts two travelers wielding magical staffs. The cavern is immense and surreal, filled with floating rocks and ancient runes glowing faintly. The style is epic fantasy with surreal and cosmic elements. Chapter 11, The Final Trial. A glowing chamber filled with radiant light where two figures channel a powerful spell binding a dark cloaked adversary whose form shifts between shadow and light. Magical energy crackles between them, illuminating ancient glyphs on the walls. The scene is dramatic and intense, painted with vibrant colors and dynamic lighting effects. Chapter 12, Return to the World Beyond. A dawn-lit forest clearing where two travelers emerge from a glowing portal. The landscape is fresh and vibrant with sunlight filtering through ancient trees. The atmosphere is hopeful and renewed, with soft golden tones and a sense of peace. The art style is realistic fantasy, emphasizing rebirth and new beginnings. Chapter 13, The Gathering Storm. A group of 5 adventurers riding through a vast, untamed landscape of dense forests and towering mountains under a brooding stormy sky. Their faces show determination and weariness. In the distance, dark clouds swirl ominously, hinting at coming danger. The style is cinematic fantasy, capturing the mood of impending conflict. Chapter 14, Whispers Within the Council. A grand stone chamber lit by flickering torches where a circle of diverse figures in robes debate fiercely around an ancient table covered with maps and relics. A young woman stands confidently among them, while shadowy figures whisper conspiracies. The mood is tense and political, illustrated in a detailed medieval fantasy style. Chapter 15, Threads of Deception. A dark, labyrinthine catacomb lit by torches where 4 heroes burst into a secret meeting of robed traders. Magical energy and sword clashes illuminate the grim scene. A cold, commanding woman leads the traders in dark magic. The art style is action-packed dark fantasy with high contrast lighting. Chapter 16, Flames of Betrayal. A fierce battle inside a stone chamber where light and shadow clash in a swirl of magic. A young woman wields radiant energy while a dark noblewoman commands shadows. Soldiers and cultists fight in chaos around them. The atmosphere is urgent and intense, rendered in vivid fantasy battle style. Chapter 17, Ripples Beyond the Walls. A campfire scene in a dense forest with 5 weary travelers sharing stories under starry skies. The mood is reflective and hopeful, with soft warm lighting and detailed fantasy clothing. Nearby, shadows hint at unseen dangers lurking just beyond the firelight. Chapter 18, The Siege of Shadows. A massive battle outside a medieval city with burning walls under a crimson sky. Armies clash in chaos with archers, cavalry, and sorcerers casting spells. A towering dark figure looms over the battlefield commanding shadow magic. The style is epic fantasy warfare with dynamic compositions. Chapter 19, Aftermath and Awakening. A peaceful city at sunrise with citizens rebuilding amidst ruins. A group of 5 heroes gather around a glowing ancient relic in a war room filled with maps and magical artifacts. The atmosphere is hopeful but cautious, painted in soft warm colors with intricate detail. Chapter 20, The Ruins of Eldora. An ancient overgrown ruin deep in a mystical forest with massive cracked stone pillars and glowing glyphs. 5 adventurers cautiously explore as ghostly spirits emerge to challenge them. The scene is mysterious and magical, depicted in a richly detailed fantasy style with soft ethereal lighting. Chapter 21, The Light Beyond the Rift. A radiant gateway shimmering between worlds where 5 heroes stand united, their hands touching a glowing portal surrounded by swirling energies of light and shadow. The landscape beyond glows with dawn's light, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. The art is vibrant, hopeful, and cinematic. Animation prompts for each chapter. Chapter 1, The Ember Beneath the Hearth. A cozy rustic cottage interior at night with a flickering fireplace casting warm orange light. A young man with dark hair and weary eyes sits in a leather armchair, slowly turning the pages of an old journal. Across from him, A teenage girl wrapped in a blanket sits quietly on the floor near the fire. Outside, gentle rain trickles down the window panes. The scene is calm and intimate, with subtle smoke and soft light flickers creating a cozy, mysterious atmosphere. Chapter 2, The House Beneath the Ashes. A mist-covered ruined house half buried by overgrown forest vines. Shadows move subtly in the fog around the dilapidated walls. Inside, a glowing black stone with pulsing blue runes levitates, casting eerie light. Two figures, a weary man with silver eyes and a young woman, stand near the entrance, bathed in faint magical illumination. The animation features slow drifting fog, subtle light pulses from the stone, and ethereal ambient particles to enhance the mystical mood. Chapter 3, The Forest That Remembers. A dense ancient forest shrouded in thick mist. Twisted trees with bark subtly morphing into ghostly faces slowly emerge and fade. Shadowy figures dart quickly behind trunks, barely visible. Two travelers cautiously walk along a winding path, their footsteps causing light mist to swirl gently. The camera follows their movement with a soft focus and dim, cool-toned lighting to evoke mystery and suspense. Chapter 4, The Gate of Whispers. A towering black stone archway inscribed with glowing silver sigils. Mist swirls around the base, slowly rising and dissipating. The gate shimmers like dark liquid, pulsing rhythmically. Two travelers stand before the gate, one holding a glowing brass key that emits soft light rays. The gate slowly opens as ethereal winds swirl, creating a magical and foreboding atmosphere. Animation includes slow fog movement, light flickering, and gentle pulsing of sigils. Chapter 5, Harrowmere Hollow. A vast subterranean cavern carved from obsidian and bone. Floating stone platforms drift slowly over pools of dark reflective water. Crimson glowing tendrils hang from the ceiling, pulsing softly. Two figures approach a massive dark stone covered in swirling runes that slowly rotate. The environment is ominous and awe-inspiring, with slow camera pans and ambient particle effects to convey scale and mystery. Chapter 6, The Awakening of the Gatekeepers. A surreal storm of swirling light and shadow envelopes two kneeling figures beside a glowing pulsating heart-shaped stone. Ethereal threads of energy weave around them, intertwining with ancient glowing symbols. The animation focuses on dynamic swirling energy, glowing runes flowing and rotating, and the gradual brightening of light symbolizing awakening and rebirth. Chapter 7, Shadows of the Betrayer. A dark ruined chamber fills with shifting shadows that coalesce into a cloaked figure with a rune-covered mask. Shadowy tendrils extend and writhe around her, threatening the two opposing figures, emitting bright magical light. The scene features slow, sinuous movements of shadows, pulsing light bursts from runes, and dynamic magical combat effects. Chapter 8, The Rift of Shadows. An intense battle in a vast cavern where beams of radiant light clash violently against waves of dark shadow creatures. Characters move rapidly with fluid fighting choreography, casting multicolored spell effects and glowing swords slicing through enemies. The cavern walls crack and shimmer as energy surges, with camera shakes to enhance tension and impact. Chapter 9, Echoes of the Forgotten Light. A mystical stone chamber illuminated by silver veins glowing across the floor and walls. Two figures stand still, channeling radiant light from their hands that pulses rhythmically like a heartbeat. Shadows retreat slowly at the edges as the light grows stronger. The animation emphasizes gentle light pulses, glowing rune patterns flowing across surfaces, and a serene, hopeful atmosphere. Chapter 10, The Journey to the Wellspring. A colossal underground cavern with serpentine rivers of flowing light and darkness winding through the floor. A gigantic guardian figure made of intertwined light and shadow slowly approaches two travelers. Floating rocks and ancient glyphs softly glow around them. The scene features slow, majestic movements, shifting lights, and ambient mystical particle effects. Chapter 11, The Final Trial. A radiant chamber where two figures focus intense magical energy to bind a dark-cloaked adversary whose form flickers between shadow and light. Swirling glyphs and runes float around as magical beams pulse and collide. The animation should highlight vibrant magical light bursts, energy flows between characters, and dramatic tension. Chapter 12, Return to the World Beyond. A portal of glowing light opens to a vibrant forest clearing at dawn. Two travelers step through, greeted by soft rays of sunlight filtering through ancient trees. Leaves and grass gently sway in the morning breeze. The mood is peaceful and hopeful, with slow camera tracking and warm color tones. Chapter 13, The Gathering Storm. A group of 5 riders travel through vast wilderness under an ominous stormy sky. Lightning flashes intermittently as clouds swirl overhead. The riders' cloaks flutter in the wind, horses gallop steadily. The scene conveys impending danger with dynamic weather effects and dramatic lighting. Chapter 14, Whispers Within the Council. A grand medieval stone chamber lit by flickering torches. A circle of robed elders debate fiercely, gestures sharp and voices rising. Shadowy figures lurk in corners exchanging secretive glances. The camera slowly pans around the chamber, capturing tension and intrigue. Chapter 15, Threads of Deception. A dimly lit underground chamber where 4 heroes burst into a secret meeting of robed traders. Sparks fly as swords clash and magical blasts illuminate faces. Rapid movement and dynamic combat sequences emphasize chaos and urgency. Chapter 16, Flames of Betrayal. An intense magical duel inside a crumbling stone hall. A heroine radiates bright light while her opponent manipulates shadows. Flames, smoke, and debris fill the air as their powers collide. Fast-paced camera angles capture the fierce energy of the confrontation. Chapter 17, Ripples Beyond the Walls. A nighttime forest campfire scene. 5 weary travelers sit around a flickering fire, shadows dancing on their faces. The wind rustles leaves and small glowing motes drip through the air. The mood is contemplative and tense. Chapter 18, The Siege of Shadows. An epic battlefield outside a medieval city with flaming siege towers, archers, cavalry charges, and sorcerers casting spells. Dark storm clouds gather as a towering shadow figure commands legions. The animation features sweeping battle choreography and explosive magic effects. Chapter 19, Aftermath and Awakening. A peaceful sunrise over a recovering city. Citizens rebuild amidst ruins. The heroes gather around a glowing ancient artifact in a war room filled with maps and mystical relics. Soft light bathes the scene, conveying hope and resolve. Chapter 20, The Ruins of Eldora. Overgrown ancient stone ruins bathed in mystical glowing glyphs. Ghostly spirits drip through broken archways. 5 adventurers cautiously explore, their movements slow and alert. Ethereal light and mist create a mysterious and magical atmosphere. Chapter 21, The Light Beyond the Rift. A shimmering portal glowing with swirling light and shadow energy between worlds. 5 heroes stand united with hands touching the gateway. The landscape beyond glows with the first light of dawn, symbolizing renewal and hope. Cinematic sweeping camera with vibrant colors and magical particle effects.